So this is Substance Painter, and I just wanted to do a quick run through on it. So you can see I've already got this outpost element that I've modeled. So to start from scratch, you just do File, New. I'm going to discard the changes. I'm just going to re-import this so you can see. So anytime that you open up Substance, you get this new project. You have a drop down for the template for what form you want to be using. We'll be using the PBR metallic rough list. That's the basic one. And then here you can, if your object has UDOMs, the normal map, you select what type, DirectX or OpenGL. The resolution of your document, that's not too important because you can always change this without data loss. And then you can import any kind of maps or anything that you've already made for your object, maybe from other platforms. And then the select key right here is for the mesh. So I'm going to bring in that outpost. And then you just click OK. And then here you can see there's the object that I brought in. And nothing's basically been assigned to this. It's basically a gray shaded object. And if you can see, I'm starting to orient around in here. So if you hold down the Alt key, you'll get these list of commands over here to move around in the space. So Control Alt Left, camera, translate. So Control Alt Left, I can translate left, move around in the object. Again, hold Alt Shift Left. You can start to move around. Alt again. You can stop rotate. Control Alt Right, texture set selection. Alt Right, camera zoom. Alt Middle, translate. Alt Left, camera rotate. And then Alt Q, texture set isolate. So for the most part, this is kind of like set up in Maya way. So I'm holding Alt Left mouse, Alt Middle mouse, or I can track zoom, and then I can zoom with just Alt Right. So Alt Middle, just kind of orient. And then the other thing, kind of like Maya, if you hit F, you can zoom back in. And let's go through some of the subjects in here. So basically right here I'm selected. It's kind of trying to mimic Photoshop. So here on the left is our tool set. So here is our brush tool, the paint. There's an eraser tool, projection, all kinds of different things in here. Stamping, clone. Let's go back to that element. Then you can export out to Photoshop, resource updater, and then the substance and the emblem as well. So file, this is where we're bringing in and saving. You can export the mesh, import resources, edit, undo, and then project configuration and settings. So here's the project configuration. This is basically the object that we're painting with. Type of normal map. Basically, we're just redoing what we've just selected. And then in here in settings, you can change some of the settings for the interface. Now, one of the things is the background color. So you can change the background color. You can change it so it's a gradient. So you get this little ramp going on. I go back to my gray. I go back to my gray. Alright. Let's see what else. Camera options, baking, where your objects are going to be cached. It knows for the hardware that I have on my laptop for iRay. Now, it's a whole bunch of buttons. This is interesting right here. The first toggle, you can cycle with F1, F2, F3 is 3D, 2D, so you can see your UV set on the right, your 3D object over in here. You can have 3D only, and you can have 2D only, which is kind of nice. So what's nice about this, just to jump ahead, if I was to paint a stroke across, you can see it update over on the file, and then the same thing, I can paint on the UV and you can see it update over in there. So let me just undo that, Control Z. perspective view or orthographic. So right here you can just see it's a subtle change, but this is an orthographic view. And then back to perspective, camera, free rotate, constrained rotation. Let's go back to 3D only. Display settings are over in here, and then this is kind of what the environment map is doing. So you can see right now, even though we have a gray background, there's actually an HDRI image in here, an image-based lighting deriving the shading that we're seeing on my object. Now, the way that you can do that is the opacity right here, environment opacity. At 100 now, you can see that there's this panorama being funneled through in my file. You can expose up, but right here with the blur, if I turn the blur down, now you can see it's a 0, so that HDR is actually showing up. And let's see, so you can rotate the environment this way. And then the other hotkey to do that is if you hold the shift key and right mouse, now you can rotate in the same way. So you can use the hotkey or you can just rotate this way. And then now under panorama, basically there's all these HDRs that are already set up that you can load in for various objects. So you can see here above the clouds. Let's see this one. So just any kind of, just to get different lighting scenarios. This is just like a soft front light. Soft to front back, and then you can just kind of, have that hidden. The blur is always nice too, so you can blur out whatever it is. And I'll just go back to the standard panorama, and then you can go back to the blur and then see. So what I like sometimes is maybe just having it so it's a soft gradient, so you're not per se 100% and like 50. That's, this is completely subjective. Now the other thing you can do in here is you can turn shadows on, and you can have it depending on the computation that you want, average, intensive, so they're better calculated. The opacity of the shadow, if they're too heavy, you can lighten them up a little bit. Again, this is nice. You can shift right, move the light around, and then move the object around. So quite a few little things in here. You can change the field of view of the camera right in here. Focal distance, aperture, and then any kind of things. You can show the mesh on your object, and then you can also have the mesh opacity. So if you want to see what your object looks like, you can change the wireframe color. It's kind of nice. So there's a couple things in here. So this is where it's mimicking Photoshop. These are your layers in your stack for your object. And you can see here base color, height, roughness, metallic, normal, and you can have that basically what's going to be happening into the materials that you're going to output. And right now, if you look down here in the properties bin, this is basically showing the brush that we have, but also in the below area, you can see the materials tab for everything that's activated right now, which is your color, height, rough, metal, and normal. And then down here is the color that, if we were to paint, we're going to paint in red. And then height, roughness, metallic, and normal are the elements that we can start to affect as we paint through everything. And then we can add all kinds of new parameters up in here. So if you go here, you can add an effect, add a mask, add a layer, add a fill layer, smart material, group things as a folder. And then over here, what we're seeing is this is actually the material, the shader itself that we're building. So there's one material for this object that we have right now. And then you actually have a history button so that you can go back in time. And this is the parameters for the texture set. So right now we're going to be at 2048. So you can see here we can redistribute to what level it can be, how it's going to mix, and then we can also bake out meshes for other things like the normal map, world space, ID, etc. So very simply, this is the paintbrush itself. I can paint directly on the object, and if I paint across, if I see here, you might be surprised that they painted all the way across, but what you're going to notice is I've actually have these columns share the UV space across here. So this guy basically is coming across. And then the body of this column, these can be individual. Let's see if we can get this guy. So right here. So kind of nice. You can go in between the two different forms. And then the other thing that is interesting, I'm only painting on this layer. And then I can add different things like this fill layer. I can fill that layer with a certain color, like that. That fill layer is only on this. If I move this below, now the paintwork that I did is above. So it's just like Photoshop. You have all the kind of things you expect in Photoshop: normal, pass through, multiply, divide, overlay, all kinds of things. You can change the opacity of that layer, so you can make it very, very faint. And then here we can go back to this object and dynamically change that. So a lot of cool things within here. There's particles that you can paint with, tools that you can use, materials, so you can throw on a material. And you can see here now this aluminum material is in this stack. And if I lessen this, and if we zoom in, it's going to be a little hard, the shadows. Let me just turn off shadows for now. So let's turn that off, and there you can see the material coming through. More opaque. So here's that aluminum. Here's the, if I make it normal, and this is the value of this. So now you can see that paint stroke coming through. So this is a pure aluminum material, and you can add a mask on the aluminum or add a mask on this. So if we add a mask, black mask, so now everything's masked out. And then if I paint in white, I'll start having this come through in this element. And now if we make this more opaque, now you can see that's that piece coming through a little bit. So there's a lot of things that you can do here to layer things up. And then another neat thing is smart materials. You can throw on a smart material, and basically this smart material has all the components that make it up that are tweakable. So it's a live object. And close that back up, and then again this can move within the layer stack to anything you want. So you really have a dynamic ability to really create custom shaders within here and store and save materials or smart materials, as you like. And it's real easy to kind of just throw some of these things on and just see how things start to look. So you can have a lot more fun trying to mess with the different operations of things and get things to work in tandem together. So it's just a real brief overview of some of the pieces within Substance Painter. I'll get more into it later to actually use this in a much more detailed way. What I do want to show is something that I downloaded called Substance Live. So let me just open a new file. I'm going to discard this. So there's this plugin that I downloaded and set up. So basically it's called Substance Live. You can see the icon right here. And what it does is you can set up your file to link back to your 3D package of choice. And right now I have it set up that it's linked to my Maya file where I'm rendering with Redshift. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to auto create a base shader and hook up all the maps that you have in your scene file to then render with. And basically, in this blog, I've actually have the link where you can actually set it up, and this is the plugin that I have, and you're basically linking Substance Painter to Autodesk Maya, and you basically have this port to make sure that they're linked to each other, which I already have. And then here, basically with this object, I have it where they're going to be talking to each other. So right now I have it with the texture that I created before using Substance, just a very simple texture. And what I'll do is I'll make sure that they're linked. So right now it should be, seeing the object right in here. So you select the path. Right now I've already got it selected. It's going to the file that I want. And then basically the software is Maya. You can use Blender, Houdini, Modo, 3D Max. You can use Maya. There's that port so you can know that they're connected to each other. It's showing the same. The renderer I'm using, you can use Arnold or RenderMan or V-Ray. So Redshift. Resolution that I'm outputting out my meshes. So basically it's going to bake down my meshes and send it over and hook it up to the shader. And then here's the bit depth that I have the meshes set up to, and then you just click send all. And you'll basically see it exporting through. And then basically you just go back to your shader in Maya. Let me mimic that. So close that. And then now basically if I render in Redshift, you can see that it has my object in there. Now the easy way, get this down, there we go. The easy way to see is if I just go back into Substance and let me just throw this object in there. Let's see, there we go. So everything just turned this like rose, there we go, blue tint chrome. So maybe we just merge the two and we get kind of that. So alright, so we just changed it here. So now if I click and then send all, and then now if we go, and now if we just render, and then there you go. I didn't have to do anything but just re-render, and it's updated my material over here with the elements that it's already pathed to. So it's a nice direct link so you can just test things out. So basically what's nice is you have the HDR in Substance and giving you an approximation, and then now you can go over in here and then basically test it with your own HDR or plug the same HDR in both packages, and then you can really see a one-to-one correlation to what you're getting out of Substance. So just a quick overview and showing you the live feature, which I kind of like. I've just started using it, and it just gives you a nice back and forth without having to reset things up and hook things up.